last set, the first
Sorry.
set.
So, good evening, everybody, and we are extremely grateful that all of you have consented to join the Hearth Within to celebrate this very wonderful book that has just been born into the world, Letters in Lowercase, by Professor Jaydeep Sarangi, who is also, he should have been my co-host for a Hearth Within function, but today he is the guest, of course. And it's his book that we will be talking about, and he chooses to be reticent about it. All right. So, what does bringing out a new book mean? I believe that to bring out a new book is to commit in and to language the experience of life as yet unconfessed. It is to put on record that these experiences have been pondered over, pasteurized, and processed till they are justified as representations of both the particular and the individual. To bring out a new book is to invite time to bear witness to days lived, both in the body and the mind, and to offer the world this little gift of one's life, for whatever it may be worth. Letters in Lowercase, Professor Jaydeep Sarangi's latest collection of poems, is just this: a record of life lived among ordinary and extraordinary people in the everyday world. Dedicated to his father-in-law, who passed on earlier this year, this is a collection that, as the poet himself says, celebrates my living and longings, my ancestors, roots and my people, my wants and cultural birth. We are extremely grateful that we have a very grand panel of poets, speakers, scholars, and critics to introduce Letters in Lowercase to the world. And without much ado, I will invite Keki and Daruwalla, who of course needs no introduction across the world, to inaugurate this session. Over to you, Keki sir.
Thank you. That's quite an honor to speak here, and congratulations, Jaydeep, for a very, very fine book, starting with the Almora poem, which I have been in that area for 6 years, from 1963, when I joined SSB, to 1968, half in Garhwal and half in Kumaon. So firstly, I want to draw attention to the title, Lowercase. It speaks of modesty on your part. And modesty becomes the older ones, because the younger, I may be wrong, are sometimes quite brash. In a poem, the very first poem is a very rugged and straightforward poem without any sleight of hand, and it takes the road to Almora. He talks of the pilgrim route. The pilgrim route is more evident in Garhwal, where they come for Badrinath and Kedarnath. But the pilgrim route is everywhere in the hills. And we talked about Kasar Devi, and the line, the summer breeze sails over my random thoughts, making me its own. Then two rivers meet in the end and dress with daylight and settle into a dreamless speech. So it talks of the journey, but it talks of also the pilgrim route, the Kasar Devi, and slowly fading into the night. Histories of the land, the next poem, ends with the lines, "We never invade others." That's the book is mild. The book is mild. It is not full of aggressive passions, if I can say so. And it ends with, "We never invade others." The lines, the poem itself, the thought, and the impulse behind the whole poem are non-invasive. We should be non-invasive, but the world at present is fairly invasive, as you see what has happened in Europe. They are not out to possess a situation or the reader. Jaydeep is carrying on a dialogue with his environment. And a writer's environment and a poet's environment also means myth, history, the backdrop, you see. And the ocean is churned into Amrit, we all know, Shivaji. Then Shiva comes as savior, and we go back to the classical myth, and the poem ends with that solitary statement, which I have already talked about. We never invade others. Though we used to go into Afghanistan during the days of the Mauryas. It is a gentle soul writing these poems. There is less of aggression, less of fire and brimstone. And that is what we actually need. Sustenance for the soul rather than sustenance for the passions, especially the aggressive ones. And it is a gentle soul writing these poems. No one ever leaves, he says in a poem on grief. Grief is speechless. Silence is its front door. Ascendants visit their relations. I mean, death is not tabled on the laptop, on the paper, but we know that it is a visitation, or rather a visit, a condolence visit. And then the next stanza starts with a line, "Monsoon is Earth's return to life." Now, we go through life, we go through death, death in the family, death in the friends. And next year, we resume life. That year, we may pass the festivals, we may not celebrate the festivals. But the next year, we return to life, and the normality comes to all of us and to life itself. The cycle of life and death we face year after year, repeated here,
And it came and went.
non-invasively. It reminds me of the very next poem, Refugees, which ends with the lines, "Transit camps are halts." They are. Transit camps are halts. Living is dying in time. Very fine line, and it should have been the line of a long poem on life, on death, on history, on everything. Another important note in his poems is melancholy. And very often the poems end with the evening, the night, and it is a sort of a symbol. The poem becomes a symbol uh, from dawn to dusk and the night. A poem called Evening starts with twilight and ends imperceptibly with a space without sound and fury, only sleep, deep sleep, and forgetting. A poem, A Happy Dress, starts with people being happy with the river. There are very many river poems, and coming from the landscape that he comes from, uh, they are very germane to what we are reading. Sorry, I got a call. I was talking about rivers, and Bengal is a riverine country. भाई मत फोन करो अभी. Thank you. Sorry, my driver is phoning when he should come. Uh, I get no phone calls, only from people who want organizations that want donations. And we have a colony of about 800 or 900 people, but there are only 3 people who are free with their donations, and no more than 3. When you write about a river, you're also writing about life, about dreams. You go into another world at night. In the other world, you face daylight, your own problems the moment you get up. So that is also a symbol. And the river poems are symbolic uh, in very small patches. A poem, A Happy Dress, starts with people being happy with the river, its water and mud, fish, and the fishermen. And it ends beautifully with, and I'm quoting, and the last line, the river I know is full of song, happy dress I wear is a roof of my syllables. That was a beautiful line. Thank you very much for this book, and Sarangi, salute. Thank you.
Thank you. Pranams.
Thank you, Keki sir, for kind of bringing out the soul of the book, through what you said when you spoke about the aggression for the soul rather than, the aggression for passion. You brought out the very noble mind behind these poems. Thank you very much for such an eloquent address. We move over to our first speaker, our first panelist, who is none other than our very beloved Sanjukta Di, Professor Sanjukta Dasgupta, Professor and former head, Department of English, and former Dean, Faculty of Arts, Calcutta University, is someone who needs no introduction, but nevertheless, since we have several students also on the panel, I would just like to offer a brief introduction. She is a very well-known short story writer, critic, translator, a member of the General Council of the Sahitya Akademi, and the convener of the English Advisory Board of the Sahitya Akademi. She's also the president of the Intercultural Poetry and Performance Library, Kolkata. She has published over 24 books, which include 7 very powerful collection of poems. And her 7th book, is called Unbound, New and Selected Poems, which was edited by Jaydeep Sarangi and Sangeeta Sanyal in 2021. And it is winning very rave reviews. Thank you very much, Sanjukta Di, for making time for us, for making time for this book. And it is over to you for your observations. Di, you are muted.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. And congratulations, Jaydeep, for letters in lowercase. And wonderful to see so many friends here. And of course, Keki has done it for us in the sense that he has beat the professors and literary critics in their own game in his assessment of Jaydeep's poetry in so very briefly, and yet he could identify some of the most defining features of Jaydeep's poetry. And he talked about the fact that these were gentle poems, these were non-aggressive, these were non-invasive, and these also had a feeling of melancholy, especially when the poems tended to taper down and come to a conclusion. Of course, poems cannot conclude. They are always open-ended because one poem leads to the other in some way or the other, though, of course, they can be also very independent of each other. So, yes, it's really a great moment for me to be part of this wonderful panel where we are talking about the 10th book of Jaydeep. Yes, now you have reached double figures. Yes, so the 10th book, and of course, as many of you, I don't know whether all of you have seen the book. See how well the cover image looks. It's a beautiful book with beautiful poems. And why not? In fact, I was just thinking about the poet, Jaydeep. And I was thinking about his name. And then I said Jaydeep, as we say in Bangla. And Jaydeep suggests joy, Joy in the West Germanic language, English, of course. And in our ethnic language, joy is about victory. The fusion of joyousness and lighting the victory torch is what distinguishes not only the poet Jaydeep as a person, but highlights the fine texture of his sensitive and deeply empathetic poems. Jaydeep's poems stand out as deeply felt, finely wrought words and emotions that are often profound, philosophic, mystical, mythical, and elusive also, as we find there are many references to Shakespeare as well as to the Indian epics. It is then small wonder that his first acknowledgement will be his direct address to his muse, that is poetry. And he repeatedly states poetry is his lifeline, his flowing river of discovery and self-discovery, his beloved and his pathfinder. So in his prefatory remarks, he observes, I'll just read the first few lines, just sharing these with you in case you don't have a copy of the book. And this is, I'm reading this to make you also feel how important it is to go to Amazon and buy the book as soon as this session is over. So this is what Jaydeep writes. A poem has been my first love. The texture is holy. I read it in a gesture of surrender. It's more than I can see, touch, and feel tangibly. In the rainy season, it is the shade. To poetry, I gaze upwards. You are my rainbow of hope. So, a poet who is so engaged, who is so empathetic, who is so involved and immersed in what he writes, the way he thinks, and the way he expresses himself and allows the words to be born on the page, really sets Jaydeep apart. Now, the poems in this particular book of his, the new book, that is letters in lowercase, are arranged in 3 sections. If I'm not mistaken, there are 79 poems. And of course, it's no credit to me that I have said 79. It very helpfully, all the numerals are next to the poems. Yes. And there are 79 poems, and the sections are Laws of the Land, Gesture of Surrender, and The Window You Hold. Each section is special and delicately nuanced. Manifestations of happiness, love, affection, annoyance, irony, tolerance, reverence, and a wonderful sense of joie de vivre, that is an exuberant enjoyment of life, infuses most of his meaningful poetry. As suggested, I will read 2 poems from the new book. The first poem, if you have it with you, is on page 43. My name is Morning. It begins like this. Just read the poem. On this bird cooing morning, I don't know what I did. Everything seemed to have disappeared for a minute. So sorry about that. So on this bird cooing morning, the sun rays on the books I'm reading these days, lighting up all words, emotions, and charm, calling it good morning, repeating the name. Another beautiful day, thoughts never arrive late here. What a lovely feeling it is to be happy. Sitting, reading, and returning to my unsaid words to you, to my unsaid words to you. So, and sorry, I made a mistake, unsaid words for you. So I will move over to the next poem, Life in Lowercase. It is on page 112. All along this clammy earth, there is a canopy of peace here after every single lonely pain and loss. I take off the shirt I liked so much, names written in only lowercase. Here I shall rest in peace. I pull off my titles. The long journey begins as I put my ear to the earth and the restless water bodies, forgetting all names of places I saw. I run down inside a darkness at the feet of a dark goddess in lower cases. So a very, very emotive poem, a very intense poem, and a poem, I think, which touches us, our minds and hearts. And as a result, I would like to just say that despite its modest title, Letters in Lowercase, the essence of these letters, which have been used by Jaydeep in his poems, resonate in capitals in the uppercase. And so poetry readers are bound to discover the book in lowercase and also realize that it is also in uppercase, as this book, Letters in Lowercase, journeys into the hearts and homes of poetry lovers and poetry readers. Thank you, Jaydeep, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjukta Di, for for that wonderful illustration, not just of the book's title, but also of how the poems speak to one another, and how it is very important to realize these very small connections that you made, the mythological, the mythical ideas that dominate the poems and, create a narrative that, as you said, is not just in lowercase, but in uppercase as well. Thank you very much for this very beautiful address and a beautiful introduction to the book. We move over next to Lakshmi Di, to Lakshmi Kannan. To Lakshmi Kannan.
Boshidhara, can
Yes,
I just come in?
Yes,
Jaydeep,
yes, of course. Di. Yes.
why are you looking so sad and why aren't you smiling?
I am listening. I'm so moved by you.
Thank you for asking that,
Keki
Di.
Di,
I was
Keki
also
Di.
thinking.
Yeah, Jaydeep,
I am
I know.
deeply
If
deeply engrossed in what you and Keki Ji
if it's
said.
your book which is in this, which is being discussed, of course, you are on tenterhooks. But
That's
try to smile, otherwise we feel, as if something is going wrong.
Oh my God.
Yes, sorry about this. Sorry.
Yes.
No, perfect. In fact, you needed to do this and you alone could have done this. So thank you for, doing this, because I felt quite uncomfortable. All Hearth events are usually co-hosted between us. And I was also, kind of worried to see Jaydeep sir so serious over his collection. Thank you for breaking the ice, Sanjukta Di. Thank you. So we move over to Lakshmi Kannan. And Dr. Lakshmi Kannan, also known by her Tamil pen name Kaveri, is a bilingual writer. Born in Mysore, she received her schooling in Bangalore. Her 25 books include poems, novels, short stories, and translations. The Wooden Cow, published in 2021, is her latest translation of the iconic Tamil writer T. Janakiraman's novel about a renowned and gifted musician's volatile relationship with a fiercely independent dancer. Lakshmi Di has been a resident writer for the International Writing Program, the Charles Wallace Writer at the University of Kent, and there are several other accolades which we can follow at her personal website. Lakshmi Di, we are very, very grateful that you have consented to be with us today, and it is over to you for your observations on the book.
Pleasure is entirely mine. Thank you so much, Vasudha, for that warm introduction. And good evening, everybody. Many thanks to the Hearth Within for inviting me as a panelist for this happy occasion, the book launch of Jaydeep Sarangi's Letters in Lowercase, but Jaydeep very much is in the uppercase. For all of us, his name will be in the uppercase. Congratulations on the publication of your 10th collection. In the title poem, everything including the names of Tagore and Kalyani are in lowercase, and we find out why. Because the peon is on leave and all letters are in lowercase. He lets it in so softly and gently. So it is a very subtle thing. So Jaydeep says, these poems celebrate my living and longings, my ancestors, roots in my people, my wants, and my cultural births. To me, the most telling line is when he says, with letters in lowercase, I return to myself. That's it. So in the acknowledgement, Jaydeep comments with not just his, with not just his ancestors and roots, but equally with poets, writers, scholars, and his family, and everyone who touched his life. So he feels deeply indebted to them. It's so true. When we write, we are never alone. We're so aware of the influences around us. In such a subtle way, they are always around us. And this book is, done with a spirit of great gratitude. Personally, I relate to one thing about this book, that it is structured in 3 distinct sections: laws of the land, gesture of surrender, the window you hold. I think it contributes to clarity, because all too often, poetry collections, list poems just like that, without sections. And that can blur the lines in our reading experience and make it somewhat diffuse. After I finished reading the poems, certain things, lingered on my mind, a recurring metaphor or a trope that deepened in significance with my consequent readings. And it just shows this poet with a keen sense of its roots, his cultural moorings, and his whole life as a writer, a poet, a cherished son, son-in-law, husband, father, friend. All those private dimensions certainly nourished his creativity. So given that constraint of time, because I'm so eager to hear all of you, the fellow panelists, I will stick to two things that dominated my, absorption of this poem. One is a strong sense of place, and the other is the river and how a river can work on our psyche. To take up a sense of place first, we come from a land and we invariably wish to return to it. However contentious our relationship is with the land, it's intimate, we quarrel with it, we, sort of find fault with it, but we wish to return to it. So it recalled for me Jaydeep Mahapatra. He has a whole collection of poems called Land. And the legendary writer Krishna Sokti has this book called A Gujarat Here, A Gujarat There, translated by Daisy Rockwell. You get a strong sense of place, rootedness, and a sense of the land. So in a private communication to me, Jaydeep shared the information that Dulung, the river, flows 15 kilometers from Jharkhand, is where his ancestors settled 356 years ago as priests in a temple. And to be a priest, you have to have his surname, Sarangi. No other person can become a priest unless they have Sarangi as a surname. Jaydeep also kindly shared his well-researched article titled Kanak Durga Temple, a landmark in the folk tradition of Paschim Midinipur. I love this article. It's so well-researched, and it sort of locates how, this temple came to be. Devi Mahamaya came in the dream of the king, and then he built a temple under a big banyan tree. And it was in such a crucial place. There was a confluence of cultures of Bengal, Jharkhand, and Orissa. So this has such a profound influence on Jaydeep that you see in this poem that I recommend that you read the whole poem, I Shall Be a River Someday. And Dr. Jayanthi Mnoj, you will particularly enjoy the way he mentions cuisines from the south. So I wandered through the veins of the mother, an active body from the Himalayas to Travancore. I tasted all cuisines prepared with mustard seeds, coconut, curry leaves, puttu and kadalakuri, and I carry my hilsa and mishti dori. So it was, he lets us in, and it's in a very delightful way. He sort of embraces all other cultures, not just because he has to, but he enjoys and finds a flavor in one of them. Because a land gives you a sense of belonging. That is the kind of a very good sense that I found in most of his poems. So to go to each time I, mention a poem, please kindly note it and read the whole poem, because I wouldn't have the time to read the whole poem. When you visit Jharkhand is one other poem, which carries memories, dysfunctional habits. I wait for your green touch sometime, somewhere. How eloquently, he talks to the land. Another one is an etymology of game, where he returns to Dulum. The rivulet is my truest self, forever panting for more flowing hope. Dulum holds me like its leaf, strong. So please read the whole poem. The river as a trope here is not just an imagery, like I told you. It carries indelible memories. Ask me, born in Mysore. The Kaveri that I was so fond of, and the Kaveri is something that I feel it's just flowing along with me in my moments of depression, in my low moments, in my high. It is there, and I feel it is in me, very much within me. So this is where, he lets the river inhabit the universe of his poetry in a very interesting way. Gifts of the Night is one other. Please note, Gifts of the Night. Keep me in the waiting. Once you attend to my call, my lines will lose charm. Dulung in summer, where farmers can cross, cows can walk down. Each leaf is green. Look at the assertiveness of what he says about Tulu. So I recommend again that you read the whole poem.
That's good.
See, with these poems by Jaydeep, we soak in the memories of his land and its river. Still, in any collection of poems, what's so delightful is there will be one or two or maybe more poems that strikes the departure. That will be so different in style and so refreshingly, sort of it will say something in a very different voice. So I will conclude reading one short poem, it won't take long, Waiting for Summer Rains in Kolkata. It is humorous and it is written in a very terse style. He visualizes Kolkata as a woman, not just a woman, but a contrary woman and a wayward woman, waiting for summer rain. If she decides to come, she may not. If the forecast is she will come, she will not. Some months ago, her remote whisper of the last rains falling in Kolkata. We keep white flowers or doorways. We step into our smiles, longings, absence, waiting in due time. It made me recall the few years I spent in Kolkata, and whenever it rained, my younger son, who was a small child then, the first thing he will say is "Brishti puri tapur tupur." He has to say that whenever there is a rain, "Brishti puri tapur tupur," and he'll attract all our attention to rain. That's Kolkata for you. Jaydeep, I wish you many more books of poems. You will find yourself in them, in your poem. Equally, your land and the dear river will find themselves in your poem. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi Di. Sometimes I want to clap and then I realize I have to unmute, and so it becomes a chaos. But thank you very much for that very splendid address for the book, especially when you talk about the sense of placeness, which is something that I agree with you upon, the connections with the land and the culture, and especially what you said towards the end, that not only will the poet find himself in these poems, but even the land, river, and all these cultural connections will be reinterpreted in time through these poems. Thank you very much for bringing this into the discussion. Thank you very much. And from here, we are going to take a big leap and move straight away to Bootheina in Tunisia. So to briefly introduce Bootheina to everyone, Bootheina Majoul is associate professor of English studies at the High Institute of Languages, University of Carthage. She has worked in the areas of cross-cultural poetics, Dalit literature, philosophical creativity, and Bootheina is a very, very powerful poet and writer, and we are very, very blessed to have her on the panel with us today. Thank you very much, Bootheina, for consenting to join us, and it is over to you for your perception on these poems.
Thank you so much, Vasudhara, for this generous introduction, and I thank you and Jaydeep for the invitation. I'm honored and humbled. So I have prepared just a small presentation where I've included my text, my own reading of Jaydeep's collection of poems. So I called it, I don't know, I'm not gonna put it full screen because I think that they will impede you from seeing the transition from one slide to another. I called it capital JS, journeying through Jaydeep Sarangi's letters in lowercase. And of course you can read, sorry, there is a typo, and you can read the capital, okay, your own way. Sharing is caring, and who cares more than a poet? Thank you, dear Jaydeep, for your generosity, but this is not a surprise from someone who bears deep joy in his name. Letters in lowercase shares a small personal voice and bears humble, peaceful messages. Poems from our land of Jaydeep's own. They never invade other spaces nor others' spaces. In the house of poetry, he shouts, "Learn, poet, learn." According to him, poems are a search, a state of learning through the vital traces of memory, of words, of grief, of fear, of joy, of silence. We are all refugees in the realm of poetry, in an endless state of survival, carried by a river of words. Within the cycle of life, with a deep joy, Jaydeep dreams and rambles. I shall be a river someday. The poet in him considers pain as seeds and cheerful moments in life as monsoons, turning thoughts into words, then they blossom to become roses we live by. Jaydeep lives inside his own room of thoughts, a temple of dreams and meditation with a solid roof on the top of the safe space of poetry. It always rains in Jaydeep's garden of dreams. Words blossom within. He recalls Shakespeare's Hamlet, Lear, and Othello, but as just guests in his text, mere apparitions for a night without words. Within the forest of stories, he grows up as a river and takes the moon as a witness for his evening thoughts. His poems seem like temples, churches, and mosques, sacred universes through the walls of the mind, hover, roam, stumble till reaching our hearts. Indeed, poems are lessons we live by. In the garden of life, you are the gardener, says Jaydeep. And as asserts Voltaire's Candide, il faut cultiver son jardin. Poets see life in lowercase. They recycle minds. They declare the renaissance of men. They are soul makers. They plant trees of hope. They blossom with love to spread deep joy. Thank you, Jaydeep, for this journey through your letters in lowercase.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bootheina. And a little thing that I forgot, to mention in my introduction about Bootheina is that if Bootheina is around, we can expect to see some wonderful visuals. And this is what, again, Bootheina proved. Thank you, Bootheina, for adding many layers of meaning to these poems, many intertextual elements, the way you juxtapose the titles, one after another, and also the pictures that you use, these visual images added further layers and will help readers who have already read these poems to read them from fresh perspectives. Thank you very much, Bootheina, for that very poetic introduction to Letters in Lowercase.
Thank you,
and thank you very much. From here, we move onwards to our next speaker, Professor Sachin C. Ketkar, who is professor in English at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Vadodara. He is a very well-known Marathi poet, writer, translator, editor, blogger, researcher. His collections of Marathi poetry have been translated into Gujarati, Hindi, Urdu, Malayalam, Telugu, and he has been widely working in the field of Indian literature with special emphasis on Marathi and Gujarati literature. Thank you very much, Sachin sir, for accepting our invitation to be a part of this panel, and we look forward to your views on the book. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Vasudhara, for having me here. And I want to start off by congratulating Professor Jaydeep Sarangi for his 10th collection. And I think this is an accomplishment in itself, given the kind of life that we all have today, especially the academics and the kind of environment that seems to be around. Writing poetry continuously and of certain quality and depth that he reveals is itself an accomplishment. So I want to congratulate you for this 10th collection of poems. Coming a bit late into the panel has its own disadvantages because there are more scholarly and accomplished people who have done a very fine analysis of the book. Professor Sanjukta has given a very detailed analysis, Bootheina, Professor Lakshmi, and there is very little that I am left to say because many of the points that I had noted have already been touched upon. But nevertheless, I would still just give my own observations rather than any critical analysis of the poems. Looking at the collection, I think what interested me was that there is a distinctive kind of engagement as somebody who is in teaching in English studies with the English canon. And I found the poem Holding very interesting, where he speaks about, the poet speaks about Shakespeare, Hamlet, Keats. And along with that, I also see a kind of distinctive engagement with Indian poets in English, especially the modernist Indian poetry in English. Jayanthi, Mahapatra, Ramanujan, all very subtle evocations of this tradition. So I think this is a very important aspect of Professor Sarangi's poems. And some of the things that have already been mentioned by renowned poets like Keki Daruwalla and Lakshmi ji. I just have to repeat it, especially the trope of the river, which seems to course through this work, and it seems to have a kind of power to gel or bring together multiple themes that run through this poem, like geography. There are very interesting place poems in this collection. For example, Ganga Ghat, Almora, Jargam, Kalighat, and place poems themselves have a certain attractiveness. And I find that very often being a very important aspect of modern Indian poetry in English, to which Professor Sarangi belongs. This trope of river also seems to be tying up with history, geography, with memory, with myth and spirituality. So all things seems to come together in the whole idea of river, and where the speaker in the poem very often expresses the urge to become a river itself and flow. And this itself is the prominent aspect of this collection. Nostalgia also seems to be a very important aspect of this collection. And I looked at the poems at the back, like in folders on page 109, where the speaker reminiscences about the grandmother's delightful Bengali silk and weavings of Jamadani muslin saris in Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. Being mad for the poems of Jivanandana Das. And the whole question of identity and memory seems to be a very important dimension of this work. And I also find that in other poems, like Waiting for Summer Rains in Kolkata. And it's the whole series, it seems to be tied with the idea of place, nostalgia to it. I remember T.S. Eliot's very famous essay, not very often discussed, is The Three Voices of Poetry, where he talks about how the speaker in the first type speaks to oneself or nobody in particular. And the second type of second voice that one finds in poetry is the voice of the speaker speaking to somebody as a form of communication. And it's the third voice where the speaker is speaking as a character, as a dramatic character in the drama, as narrative, in the form of kind of dramatic persona. And the personas and the masks have their own utility. And I find that all these three voices seem to emerge in various places in Jaydeep Sarangi's work. And giving these as my preliminary observations, I would just want to end whatever I have to say very briefly by talking about where the person behind persona very gently reveals himself, and that persona stays. And it's one of the most touching poems in the collection. It is intersected Indian mother that I found very interesting. I'm unable to, because I've bookmarked so many poems. I find
98.
it difficult to look at it. Page
That
number?
poem is 19. That poem is page number 98.
Okay.
98.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah. The speaker in the poem, The Indian Mother, actually the poem reveals a different kind of challenge of being an Indian woman, mother in the first place. And it describes the entire day. And it's towards the end of the day that Indian mother can actually visit what she wants to, living most of the day for the others. It's at the end of the day. And when she has served almost everyone, she goes to reading bell hooks. And she says, dreams are no longer dear to me, only thoughts of poetry. Poets are windows, hope of silver. I read bell hooks to cheer up the spirit, contested with issues. And the speaker, the intersected Indian mother, goes on to talk about how she lives in intersections of various kinds of spaces that she has to inhabit. And not all of them are the spaces that she as a person would like to. She says, my tired hands carry nothing. I return to Jericho. The ruins never speak. I remember I was in Memphis. I visited each door of love. In the veil of night, there is no life to be found in silent longing. And in some ways, it sums up some of the essential themes in the collection about no life to be found in silent longings. And that seems to be one of the ideas that seem to be prominent in this collection of poems. So I just want to end this very primary kind of observations after reading this poem and congratulate Professor Jaydeep once again for this collection. And I also want to thank the organizers for giving me a chance to share my views and meet learned people and poets like Keki Daruwalla. It's always a privilege to listen to Professor Sanjukta Dasgupta and Professor Lakshmi. And Keki Daruwalla is, I'm sure, everybody's favorite poet, so there is no need to say much about this. I want to thank you for this privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sachin, sir, for your very, very pertinent observations on the book, and also for bringing in that wonderful essay, The Three Voices of Poetry, and the way that, the essay illuminates some of the poems in the book, which are written in a very dramatic form. And I remember that the first dramatic poem that I ever read, because Keki Daruwalla is here, was, The King Speaks to His Scribe. And I read that before I read Browning. And I think that my ideas of the dramatic monologue are fueled more by The King Speaks to His Scribe than, My Last Duchess. So thank you for bringing in that wonderful essay and for talking about history and the various marginalities that are very evident in letters in lowercase. Thank you very much. And with this, we move over to Urna Bose, our very dear Urna, who has also been very generous to write a beautiful blurb for the book. Urna Bose is an advertising professional, writer, poet, and editor. She won the Enchanting Editor Award 2019 from the Telangana Poetry Forum and the Woman Empowered, Scintillating, Creative, Impactful, Feminine Power Inspiration Award 2020. Having worked with advertising giants, she is also, a very, very powerful poet. who intends to fight social inequalities with her very powerful voice and pen. So thank you very much, Urna, for being a part of the book's growth production and for being with us to share your voice on the book today. Over to you.
Thank you, Vasudhara, for that lovely introduction. I didn't know you knew so much about me. So thank you so much. And also for this invitation, a big thank you to Vasudhara and to Jaydeep sir. I'm so honored. I cannot tell you how excited I am, and I'm so honored. And it was absolutely gorgeous to hear Keki ji and Sanjukta ma'am as always. I mean, I always look forward to these sessions because I truly walk away feeling so enriched, and I just feel like living life all over again. And also it was lovely listening to Bootheina and Professor Sachin and Professor Lakshmi. So thank you for that detailed analysis, and all of you brought lovely points and a very deep understanding. I'll quickly talk about Jaydeep sir's poetry, which I like what I felt having read the book. And then I'd like to read two short poems. So Jaydeep Sarangi wields his visceral, versatile, vivid pen with a rare sense of balance and mastery of style. I read this poem called My Room of Thoughts, which is in page 39. And once I read the poem, I felt that his pen tiptoes under your skin, just like Keki ji and Sanjukta ma'am correctly said that his voice is very soft and tender. He has this non-invasive style, he's never kind of intrusive. So when I read that poem, I felt that his pen tiptoes under your skin, probing and penetrating the epidermis of your perception, trying to unravel what does it mean to live through the matrix of dizzying highs and depleting lows. Still, some other poems when I read, I felt that Jaydeep sir's pen dances the primal cosmic dance with utmost flair, gyrating like an Egyptian belly dancer between the known and the unknown, the temporal and the ethereal, the haunting and the haunted, and the spoken and the unspoken, which is really the realm of true poetry. Poetry does delve into the unspoken more than the spoken, right? He also writes about flashbacks, memories, joint pains, and Himalayan responsibilities. And I can't even begin to say, how much Himalayan responsibilities resonated with me, because it is true that, sometimes your shoulders droop and ache with responsibilities, and yet you have to kind of push yourself back and just go on. And that is, I think, the hallmark of great poetry, when it moves from the personal sensibility to the collective sensibility. So that was amazing, Jaydeep sir. I just love the Himalayan responsibilities bit. He also writes about time and how it's a relentless wheel, which it is. And the loaning out of one's heart, farmers, friendships, untitled sentiments. There are these range of sentiments, and in the spectrum of emotions, there are these sentiments and emotions which you can't label, and which poetry can only talk about. And I suppose that also is the realm of poetry. And then there is this poem called A Door, which I felt truly unbolted the door of my understanding of Jaydeep sir's poetry, because his pen moves with an explicable ease, almost knocking on the thoughts of the reader. The poems cut right through to the core. And I would like to end with two short poems. The first one is called House of Poetry. In this poem, Jaydeep sir almost tells us the architecture of the House of Poetry. House of Poetry by Jaydeep Sarangi. House of Poetry has many doors. Windows are wide open to the sky. Its floors are slabs of fire, colorful. Stone pebbles lead the garden path of thoughts and desires, connecting the movement within with the agonies of the world, parliaments of nations. Happy flowers are bedrooms where images caught sing their hearts out. Nearby river is the soul. Forefathers are still awake with desire for water poems. I'll read that line out once again. Forefathers are still awake with desire for water poems. And what a line is that? I think this line is also a tribute to the Hindu practice of offering water and food to our forefathers, and almost saying a thank you for being able to carry on their legacy, which was beautiful. The second poem, I think Keki ji made a reference to this poem, and I would like to read out the poem. It's called Vital Traces. What a layered poem it is, and it touches upon so much in such a beautiful way that I can only read the poem and not, I can't convey that in words. I think I'll fall short. Vital Traces by Jaydeep Sarangi. No one really leaves. No one really leaves. All remain in footprints, traces counting past time. Grief is speechless. Silence is at its door. Ascendants visit their relations. Monsoon is Earth's return to life. An old city clock strikes hard. The owl is unaware of the dark. Myth of the empire is a survival game. Poems are a search. Poems are a search, learning to live with all vital traces. Poems are indeed a search, and I think anyone who reads poetry or writes poetry or goes to poetry at some point in their lives, we are all seekers, right? And poems are a search. So thank you, Jaydeep sir, for this lovely book. What a book. And I'm truly honored to be able to read this book and share with you my thoughts. Thank you so much.
And at this point, on this wonderful note, would it be possible for all of us who have a hard copy of the book to hold it up so that we can declare this book launched? So yes, my screen is not visible if I'm, okay, this is how. Thank you. And I'll just take a screenshot of this. Thank you very much. So Letters in Lowercase by Professor Jaydeep Sarangi is finally launched and into the world. And all of us wish the book a very grand and glorious journey. It is also a good time to ask the poet himself, who has been, as Sanjukta Di pointed out, very serious, far too mellow for his usual cheerful and boisterous self. And I believe that this is a moment of profundity, and it is time to call him up, to disturb him a little, to disturb the universe a little, and get him to speak on his own book. So Jaydeep sir, it is over to you for your note of gratitude for this, for our speakers before, we enter the reading session. Over to you.
Thank you. No word is sufficient for all of you, because many of us present here are my mentors. We learned the art of poetry by reading Keki ji, by reading Jayanthi, by reading Sanjukta, Lakshmi Kannan. And many are a long time friends in this virtual platform. Bootheina, with whom we are very close friends for long time. Sachin C, Urna, Jayanthi, and of course, Vinay. You are the part of the book and the vital traces that I search for. This book is the product of last 2 years, and it started with my journey to Almora. and in the university where Professor Hamid is the head of the department, when he was about to retire, he asked me to visit Almora and visit some of the rarest traces of Tagore and Vivekananda when they visited Almora, where they used to stay, and some of the legacy that followed. I deliberately started the book with that particular poem, as Keki mentioned. I can never forget the spiritual roots of India. And if we go into the Himalayan range and beautifully marked, and all we get attention how the life has been connected, and the life is a search, continuous search. I don't know, when we are born in India, there is always hankering for the Himalayas. Because when we read the Mahabharata, of course, the great Pandavas, they, went to the Himalayas for Shargaloka, possibly for a better community, or maybe an advanced civilization near the paths of Manas Sarovar. So Himalaya is the seat of tradition, seat of attraction, and seat of spiritual growth, spiritual search. And the search is the poet, and search is poetry. Here Keki is there. He has been inspiring the poets for generations. For last 50 years, his first book was published in 1970, Under the Orient. So 50 years and counting, and it means a lot. We get into poetry by rivers, ruins of civilization, night, days delayed growth has watched and perceived by a poet or by a commoner. In the eastern part of India is full of rivers. I don't know, I'm mad about rivers. When I go and visit a place in any country or any place, I go to the riverbed and riverside. That is my search. And this book is very close to my heart because uh, it talks about my making in the childhood, my ancestry. The article Lakshmi Ji was referring to, Lakshmi Kannan, my almost mentor to Lakshmi Ji. That article traces back our establishment in a remote place of Bengal as a priest to the king of Chilkigad. We came from Puri as priest to the king of Chilkigad 357 years ago. I always think on and find, and I always have a perception that all my ancestors are sleeping peacefully on the banks of River Dulong. I live for Dulong. I carry its water, and our ancestral house is no more there. We shifted. But whenever I visit Jharram, still my parents live there. I visit Dulong if I get 2 hours time. I don't know why. I am fanatic about Kapil Dev. That's why I called him the Renaissance man. He made a renaissance of Indian cricket. Cricket became so popular because when Kapil used to bowl, Kapil used to bat. A child like me, we could not resist our temptation. That's blood. Kapil Dev and Maradona. I think these two people are very close to the hearts of the Indians, not only the Indians, but also many football lovers and cricket lovers of the world. I think Sanjukta or Keki mentioned about my acknowledgement. I started with a poem has been my first love, but my wife is also listening to this particular program. She is here. I can't. I think Sutapa is here, so I will have to read a poem dedicated to her. I'll come back to that. At home tonight. At home tonight. I think Sutapa is here for Sutapa Bhattacharya. Sutapa Bhattacharya. We met each day. We meet each day, not because a Kal Boishakhi for Bootheina, it's a storm in India, has driven us indoors and massacred our trees, uprooted lampposts, the coconut tree my father planted after India won the World Cup. No youth can forget India winning the World Cup in cricket in 1983. That revolutionized Indian economy, Indian minds. Saplings sprout in the corners with promises and the tides for tomorrow. Our daughter is out with a dolphin. She may not come before the first light. Our minds know how we listen to each other in rains and lightning. We are back where we belong, a rainy togetherness. We know that the goddess who resides in this old house has the ocean's forbearance. Thank you, each one of you. You are the mentor. For you, the poems are. Thank you. I'm really humbled by your words, generosity, and kindness. Thank you all who are in this platform today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jaydeep,
Thank you.
calling us.
Thank you very much, Jaydeep sir, for that warm, the writer's note on the poems, I would say, because I always say that though we are living in an era of the death of the author can never be dead. We can never, afford to relinquish the author. So it was important to have that about these poems from you. Sutapa ma'am is, of course, a far bigger part of this poetic universe than you will concede to acknowledge. And we are very grateful that she has been with us throughout the program. Thank you also, ma'am, for being the muse that inspires these poems. And we hope that the flow of Dulung and poetry continues. With this, we move over to the...
Kalidas has raised the hand.
Oh. Kalidasa, would you like to say something?
Yeah, this is just to congratulate Jaydeep for this collection of poems. I remember I read about Dulong from your poems when you came to Khariar years ago. And I'm very much glad that I'm a part of this program to listen to Professor Lakshmi Kannan. I met her long ago there at SRC, Professor Sanjukta Dasgupta. And also I remember I met Professor Sachin Ketkar there at Baroda. So thank you so much. And I believe, when I was listening to Professor Jaydeep Sarangi and to others, that we can always write in lowercase, when we become conscious of our, own, existence. Perhaps I can only write my name in lowercase when I become too very humble, when I compare myself that I exist, and it is the others who matter very much. Others will be giving me some sort of identity. I am nothing without you. When I say you, I mean people, places, this vast land of ours, this ocean, the elements. So I am nothing. And I am reminded, just to end, I am reminded of Shakespeare's famous soliloquy from Hamlet. Perhaps we use the uppercase, capital letters, when you think of Hamlet's famous few lines. What a piece of work is a man, how noble in region, how infinite in faculty, in form and grace, how express and admirable, in beauty, how like an angel. in apprehension, how like a god, paragon of animals. But we come to the low case when we say, what is this quintessence of dust? Maybe very precious, but just dust indeed. So thank you, Jaydeep, for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this program. And maybe someday I will go through this anthology. And thank you, Basundhara Madam, and everyone. Thank you, Keki ji. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kalidas sir. And with this, we move over to the reading session. And I would like to invite Jayanthi Manoj. Jayanthi Manoj is Assistant Professor of English, teacher, mentor, life skills trainer, and Vice Principal from Holy Cross College, Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu. She is a widely anthologized Indian English poet and has an anthology of poems titled Sketches from the Pages of My Diary. Jayanthi also very regularly posts very, very healing and wonderful voice notes on Facebook. And it is a joy to be in her luminous company. Thank you, Jayanthi, for joining us for this evening. And it is over to you.
Thank you, Basundhara. And as usual, you moderate so well. You keep the light glowing in the evening. And congratulations, Jaydeep ji, on the latest collection, Letters in Lowercase, which is an anthology of poems which echoes the soul of all your travels and the travel of your soul that is very deeply felt in your poems. And it also expresses and explores the various terrains you have traversed, both on land and in your mind. So it's a wonderful collection, and I'm delighted to read from it. I'll read 3 poems, very short ones, from the first section of the collection, Law of the Land. I'm so happy to read Road to Almora, the much talked poem of the evening. Road to Almora. The place illuminated my rugged soul, and the light the pilgrim heart of the peripatetic monk, the silent hills of Almora, the cave of Khazar Devi. I rested on a rock at Kakrigat. I touched that holy people tree. Mayavati is the order for lives who live for others, hands folded. A land of dreams of our forefathers in which was born Parvati. As the summer breeze sails over my random thoughts, making me its own in light of my eyes. An old rickshaw puller was pious who never read Gandhi or Ambedkar. History waved its delicate hands. The ride screamed to a stop. Cozy meets with swell, dreams with daylight, all settle with the dreamless, nonsensical sleep. That was Road to Almora. I'll also read Histories of the Land. Temple without an idol or shrine, a blue flame emerging from the rocks of Jwalaji. Kangra prays for connecting dynasties. The ocean is churned for Amrita. Lord Shiva comes as a savior. Vishkanyas is today's girl power. Ran with letters and hands the Ram Setu bridge. History has its own book, its mysterious pages record, forgetting by the lines, by whims, foul smells of selves, kings. You're right, epics are partial. Poems come out of blank hearts, mud water of Varanasi. Ignorance is no virtue. Visitors are no rulers. Mothers of Manipur are my mothers, my native. My mother has one name. Her sons are my brothers. We play wild games in the banks of Godavari. Its dark water hold us tight. No mountain can separate us, even in laws of the land. We never invade others. That was the last line that was also very powerful. We never invade others. Just one short poem for this beautiful evening. And I was very much taken up with this poem about how one can be silent and be quiet about an evening. You'll understand when I read it out. Evening. The day is too quiet. All are happy with daily living, except a slow evening without speaking to anyone. I never mind when occasional thoughts remain to be taken, a friendship with unexpressed sorrow. I can neither see you nor hear you, only winter of things flow, at the wheel of flying to and fro. Where do we send our thoughts? I'm too feeble to write about the evening. I choose to call it night, a space without sound and fury, only sleep, deep sleep, and forgetting. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Jayanti.
Thank
You
you.
kind of brought those poems alive by the very beautiful way you read them. Thank you very much for, filling meaning into these poems, because poems are empty glasses until one fills them with meaning. Thank you very much for this. And we move over now to our next reader. Professor Vinay Vasule is head Department of English, Narayan Rao Amrita Rao Deshmukh Arts and Commerce College, Chandur. He specializes in Indian English poetry, Victorian poetry, and we are very, very grateful, Vinay sir, that you have consented to join us for this evening. Over to you for your readings.
Thank you very much, Vasudhara ma'am. Good evening to all panelists and esteemed poets present in this program. On this fabulous occasion of the launch of the letters in lowercase, I would like to extend my hearty congratulations to my dear friend, Dr. Jaydeep Sarangi. Actually, for me, Jaydeep is a shining star in the galaxy of Indian English poets today. It is my friendly opinion about him. And on this occasion, I would like to extend my huge thanks to Dr. Jaydeep and Vasudhara ma'am for giving me this opportunity to read out the poems from this new collection, Letters in Lowercase. I would like to read two poems from this new collection, and the title of that poems are Offerings at Kali Ghat and Life Factory. As far as for me, Offerings at Kali Ghat, it seems me a spontaneous overflow of the powerful feelings through the mighty pen of Dr. Jaydeep. Now I will read out the poem Offerings at Kali Ghat. My fair loves, penguins dance, they awake me in a sweet unrest of desire. Her ripening thoughts are bare, I long to return in love's loneliness. I walk with my white pride by its ancient shadows upon stones, insistent, palpable, and true. The wide road takes me to Kali Ghat, where I let my soul behave like a child. Every small word is my offering. I begin with the same each time. I begin with the same each time. Now I would like to move to the second poem, Life Factory. And a very vivid description and the poet's dissatisfaction towards the politicians and their politics in the democratic country is recorded in this poem. I would like to read. Yearning for a miracle man never ends. Laws of the land are sent to gallows. The only certainty is the government in power can blame the previous government for everything. Lawgivers never read a Gita Bitan. They never cross Volga and Congo. I put my ears to the earth. I hear them shouting at each other, spitting poisons face to face in a live factory with different givers, with a different grooves. Truth is where we hide our faith. Truth is where we hide our faith, craving for more light. The Gulf of Tonkin, a mysterious door. History knows it all. Slippery bed of lies, slippery bed of lies. I hear a small voice speaking. I hear a small voice speaking, crows from the lean electric wires. The small eyes stare into an unknown sky in search of a better sky tomorrow, in search of a better sky tomorrow. Here we see the optimism of the great poet, Dr. Jaydeep Sarangi. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Vinay sir, for reading out those beautiful poems. Shubham, you have raised your hand. Would you have something to say? And for everybody in the audience, Shubham Pati is the designer of this very beautiful cover of the book, Letters in Lowercase. And since Shubham has not responded, he may have raised his hand by mistake. So that's completely fine. But we are very grateful to you, Shubham, for designing this very beautiful cover. It was Jaydeep sir's wish that there should be a rain of alphabets in lowercase on his book because he's very fond of rain. So rain and alphabets come together in this very beautiful imagination that Shubham has brought into the book. So thank you, Shubham, for that. And with this, we come to the end of a very, very memorable session. We are very, very grateful to each one of you in the audience for making time to join us this evening, because as it is, we say that we don't have takers for poetry, but we are very grateful that we maintained a very beautiful, a very warm, a very participative audience throughout the session. So thank you very much, audience. Thank you very much, friends, poets, fellow poets, scholars, for being with us on this beautiful evening. We are very grateful to our esteemed panelists, to Keki Daruwalla sir, though he is not here at the moment, but for all of us who have been in an online session with Keki sir previously, we know how much he's on tenterhooks before a session, because sometimes his audio does not work, sometimes his video does not work, and sometimes his neighbor is not around to help him. And therefore, you know, he was on tenterhooks for this session as well. And he said that he did not want to make any errors. He is usually also the first one to join. He joins half an hour in advance of a session just to make sure that everything is well connected. So we have had many trying times with Keki sir in the past, and it was God's blessing that things went very smoothly for him this evening. We are very grateful that you know, he could do this for us. We are extremely grateful to Sanjukta Di, to Lakshmi Di, to Sachin sir, Bootheina, Urna, all of whom, you know, I understand that, all of us understand that 7:30 p.m. on a Sunday evening, especially with no COVID and no protocol of staying indoors, can be very difficult to manage for an online session. For an online session, it is usually, or for an offline session, it is worth it because there is tea and there is snacks and there is jokes and there is physical, you know, that physical communion, which is thoroughly missing in an online session. So we are extremely indebted that you've made time out of your valuable schedules to be with us on a Sunday evening. So that is what makes it, you know, it shows your generosity and also your commitment to poetry, as well as your deep affection for Jaydeep sir and for the Hearth Within. So we are very grateful that all of us, you know, could be here today. I'm extremely grateful to Jayanthi and to Vinay sir for the way they, you know, filled the poems with meaning. They brought in new shades into this entire book. And we look forward to rereading these poems, you know, with the kind of lights that have come onto these poems from all these various directions. Thank you very much to each and every one who made time to be with us. Thank you, Sutapa ma'am, once again. And on this parting note, would you have something to say, because the book is dedicated to your father, who Jaydeep sir has often told me and to others, who nourished him very deeply with his scholarship, with his encouragement. And Jaydeep sir has often claimed that your father loved him more than he loved you. So would you have something to say as a parting note on these poems? Over to you.
Thank you, Vasule. Thank you, everyone, especially Jaydeep, for claiming that my father loved you too much and more than me. And it's the feeling of immortalization. I think he has immortalized his passion and our relationship. Everyone has said I don't have any.
So, Tapa ma'am, it's not audible actually. Maybe some issues with the microphone.
Yeah.
No, not yet audible.
Now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vasudhara. And thank you, Jaydeep, for claiming that my father loved you more than me. And all the panelists and all of you have discussed and explained so many things that nothing is left for me. And I am honored, and it's a kind of feeling of immortalization of passion, emotion, and our relations also. Thank you, Jaydeep. Thank you for making everything immortal. And thank you for your passion also, emotion also. Thank you, Vasudhara. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. That is, nothing could be worthier, than this parting note from you on the book. So this brings the evening to a very, very beautiful and memorable conclusion. Thank you, everybody, for joining the Hearth Within, and we look forward to staying connected in and through poetry.
Thank
Keki
you
sir,
so much for your
came
generosity. Thank
belatedly,
you so
but
much.
Thank you, Keki
Thank
sir,
you,
for being
thank you,
present with
thank you
us
so
throughout.
much. Thank you, Lakshmi ji.
Thank you.
Lakshmi ji,
Vasudhara.
Sachin
Thank
ji.
you and congratulations, Jaydeep sir.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sanjukta di.
And
Sunday.
congratulations again,
Okay,
Jaydeep.
thank you.
And thank you, Vasudhara, for